Hey guys, and welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing what I think is the perfect college football playoff system, or at least what is a system that is head and shoulders above what we currently have. So, what we have in the current system is who's ever ranked in the top four make it to the college playoff. So, this is just a for instance, but this is the first college football rankings of the 2016 season. So, we're in week 10 here, and we have two SEC teams, and I see a big problem with this because one of the eliminators that I put in place in my particular system is if you don't win your conference championship, then that automatically eliminates you from winning the national championship. And I think that the the conferences should be the first line of eliminating teams, and then once you get the conference champions, then you decide who's going to be in the playoffs. So what my system would be is it would be an 8-team playoff system. You pretty much have to go to 8 teams to make it fair because in the current system, you can't even get the 5 Power 5 conference championship winners into the playoff, which is unfair in itself because let's just say in any particular year, you could have a situation where all 5 conference champions go undefeated, and then at that point, you're pretty much just taking um, obviously some sort of bias in the committee choosing which 4 of those teams are most deserving. Or you could even get a situation where the top 5 conference winners each have 1 loss, and you'd be in a similar situation. And it's just a really unfortunate situation that you can be put in with limiting yourself to having just 4 teams have a shot at making the playoff and winning the title. So how I would do it is I would take 8 teams, and 5 of the spots would be automatically delegated to the conference champions of the Power 5. So you'd get the SEC champion, the ACC champion, the Big 10 champion, the Big 12 champion, and the Pac 12 champion. And then the other 3 spots would be relegated to the top 3 teams that are either ranked or picked based on their strength of schedule or just their overall resume from the group of 5 conference champions. And then we also would throw in the independents into this pool as well. So I'll just go through how this particular system would work. For instance, if the college playoff were based on how things stand currently. So you'd have Alabama as the 1 seed out of the SEC. Clemson is the 2 seed out of the ACC. Michigan would be the 3 seed out of the Big 10. Texas A&M would be eliminated, and you'd go down to Washington as the 4 seed out of the Pac-12. And then Ohio State would be eliminated because Big 10, and then that's just the case with all of these big conference teams. And then you get down to Oklahoma, and they would get the 5 seed being the Big 12 champion. And now we'd go down to the group of 5 and independents. So basically we would just take the highest ranked team at the end of the year, but you'd have to be your conference champion first and foremost. Unless you're an independent, then you could get one of these final seats just based on where you're ranked. So the one issue with my system is the independence factor because you could get like Notre Dame ranked, 22 or 20 in any given year, and they would pretty much guarantee themselves a spot in the playoff, which I think is kind of unfair. To make my system better, would have to basically get rid of the independent teams and have them either maybe keep their independent status and not have a chance to make the playoff or join a conference. Those would be the best case scenario. So Notre Dame would join the ACC, and then Army could join Conference USA or the AAC, like Navy join the AAC, and then you'd have UMass could get back in the MAC or join the Sun Belt or one of these other small conferences, and then BYU could either join the Big 12 or the Mountain West Conference or something like that. But that would eliminate that particular issue. But anyways, getting into who would get the 6 seed based on how the teams are currently rated, that would go to the MAC champion Western Michigan. And the 7 seed would go to Boise State. Obviously, right now Boise State isn't on top of the Mountain West standings, but if they were the Mountain West champion, they would be the next team in line to get a seeding, so they'd be the 7th seed. And then the 8th seed would go to the best of the rest, so that would be your conference champion from the AAC, the conference champion from Conference USA, the conference champion from the Sun Belt, and then also who's ever the best team out of the independents. And just off the top of my head, that'd probably be somebody like Troy or um, let's see here. Probably none of the independents, because Army right now has the best record of an independent. They're the only independent that's above 500, so they probably wouldn't get the nod. And then maybe you'd have an argument for Navy if they were able to win the AAC. But anyways, it would just be one of those teams would get the 8 seed. So that would be the final bracket. And what you get in this situation is all of the Power 5 teams are represented no matter what, which is great. But what also makes this scenario great is you get representation to the smaller conferences, or the conferences that don't have the same kind of money and resources that the bigger conferences have, and you give them a seat at the table, because what we currently have with the top 4, it's basically impossible for one of the smaller conference teams to get into this particular playoff, and it just seems extremely unfair to me. Basically what these smaller conference teams have to do is go head and shoulders above what a normal team would have to do to prove themselves to get worthy into the top 4. So you'd basically have to have a situation like Houston was earlier this year, beating Oklahoma, and then they would have had to completely dominate and run through their schedule and then beat Louisville, and then they would have probably gotten in the top 4. But that's just, such a high burden of proof to get into the top 4. And obviously the college playoff committee doesn't want these smaller conference teams to get into the Final Four, because that hurts the bottom line of the system in terms of profitability, and that's one of the main issues with only selecting big conference teams to get into the current system. But that would solve that particular issue, and then also it would just have a more of a feel like the big dance in college basketball, where you get all of the automatic qualifiers through conference tournaments, and then you just take the best teams that are available. But it gives the small guy a seat at the table, and that's what really makes the big dance one of the greatest sporting events, not just in the United States, but in the world, in my opinion. And it would just give these smaller teams a seat at the table with a chance to advance and show that they're worthy. And also, it would have a trickle-down effect to these smaller conferences, because it would help in their recruiting with their players, knowing that if they go to these smaller programs, then they would have a chance and a seat at the table at a national championship, which would just have great benefits, I think, to the college football landscape overall. It wouldn't just concentrate all of the power into the Power 5 conferences. It would help the smaller conferences really have a fighting chance, not just in recruiting, but also could bring more money into these programs and just benefit the whole landscape as a whole. So just to quick run through, you'd have, in my particular playoff scenario, you'd have Alabama against probably like Troy or something in the first round as the 1 versus 8 matchup. Then you'd have Clemson against Boise State, Michigan against Western Michigan, which would be unbelievably awesome if that would actually happen. And then you'd get Washington against Oklahoma in the 4 seed versus 5 seed matchup. And in that particular playoff scenario, you'd probably get Alabama moving on to face Washington, and then you'd get more than likely Clemson moving on to face Michigan, and then from there you'd have your Final Four. But upsets are always possible, and you just never know. Western could push Michigan, you never know. Boise State could push this Clemson squad, and I think that would just really just be a great situation, really exciting to see. So that's my take on how the college football playoff should adapt in the coming years. Not only because it benefits all of the Power 5 conferences in getting representation into the playoff, which I think is important, but also it would strengthen college football below the Power 5 conferences and really give the Group of 5 a fighting chance in terms of just recruiting and money into their programs and just all of the above. So thanks guys for watching, and I appreciate you sticking through to the end of this video to see how I have my college football system working and how what I think is the best strategy for them to employ in the future. If you're looking for more college sport related content, you can subscribe and get notifications to future videos that I release. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.